Okay, so I do want to start with just a little bit of data just so you can see what industries are using email marketing, how it's working, and just to see why maybe there is still a case for it. So this first one, this was one where respondents were asked, in which of the following ways, if any, would you prefer companies to communicate with you, and please select all that apply. What I think is interesting here is if you look all the way on the left, you can see email was the top response. It was just over 70%. And I actually thought it was pretty interesting that postal mail was second, almost half. So I think about all the junk mail that I get that goes straight to my recycling bin, but it seems that that's still a case for people. What's interesting, if you look more over to the right, when it talks about video ads or online ads, those aren't as, people aren't as responsive to that as they are to email. So again, all the way over there on the left, you can see that there's definitely still a case for email marketing. Next, we'll look at a couple industries, and maybe you can identify your own industry here, is it just talks about the open rate industry. So you can see that, let's see, food, science, sports, and entertainment, somewhere along the middle there, they are in the bottom for the open rate. Not as many people are opening messages in those industries. Where if you look kind of this other kind of aqua blue for lodging, travel agencies, and services, that they have over half, 56% open rate, which is very good. And that makes sense too. People are always looking for a deal. If they're planning a vacation, they want to, see who has the best information or the best rates regarding lodging or flights or just entertainment packages. So this is how you can kind of compare it across industry, and you might see your own industry here. Hopefully you're more at the top quartile of the open rate than the bottom, but you can see there's really quite a range. Another piece of data I want to show too is the click to open rate. So we're going to be talking about open rates, and we'll talk to you about what that number even means, like how it's determined. And here too, you'll see that, some very low numbers. I was interesting, the weakest performer there was insurance. So their open rate, click to open rate is 0.2%. So I guess there's just not a lot of hot information there going out in the insurance field maybe. And then in computer hardware and telecommunications, it was in the top quartile. So that was kind of interesting to me too, with the hardware being up there. So again, the theme here, just giving you these couple slides, is just that it's really across the board, and the best way to compare is to just comparing to yourself. We're going to talk about that as we talk about metrics too. The other thing, too, I want to mention is the unsubscribe rate. Now, this can happen for any reason, and sometimes there's just not something you can do about it. It's maybe you just caught somebody on a bad day. You can see the unsubscribe rate's really not too bad across the board here. And what I would say with your unsubscribe rate is to not get too worried about it. Again, you have people who are going to maybe on information overload, or they just didn't have a day, or just something's going on. But when it does happen, I would still know when it happens. So does it happen when you're sending out your email newsletter, when you started on Tuesdays instead of Fridays? Did you find that the unsubscribe rate went out then? Do you find that maybe when you were going to 3 times a week instead of once a week, the subscribe went out? So I would look at things like that when people are unsubscribing, the frequency. But I would also look at the content. Is there one email newsletter that you found a lot of people unsubscribed? It could just be that there was something about the content there. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. Everyone is going to have an unsubscribe rate. But still, again, look at the content, the context, the day, the time, and see if you can figure out why that might have happened for you. Just ask a quick poll, and you can just go ahead and put this in the chat box or the Q&A box, is why you would use email marketing. It's either why you're using it now or why you're thinking about it. There isn't a right or wrong answer. I just like to see what attendees are already doing when I talk about a topic. So again, you can just put a chat box or Q&A and just indicate why you would use it or you are using it. And just take a minute for that and just see what people come up with. Regular touches to stay front of mind. Permissions, absolutely a good reason for sharing email is with Notion. Yep, so if you have somebody got a sale coming up, large audience, having instant message, that's great too. But thank you, I appreciate the responses. That's good to know kind of what people are doing, how they're using it right now. Again, here's some other cases to use it. Again, not all of this is going to be applicable to, to everyone, but some of these were alluded to already. So why you would still use it, of course, is customer retention. You want to keep people as customers. There's so much noise out there that you want to keep them kind of on top of staying top of mind, is that you're retaining your customers. If you have new product information or new services information, so let's say you were selling a service and you've changed your service to having, maybe a gold, silver, platinum levels of service, or maybe you're repackaging it, you're sending it out as a new packaging, that would be a case for it. The awareness, somebody said that too, the messaging and just staying on top of mind with the company. And the site traffic, and this is a really interesting one I've seen with some clients, that their email newsletter has been really the best source of traffic to the site. So in your email newsletter, you're telling people about something, probably with the goal of driving them to the site to make a purchase or generate a lead. So I encourage you, we'll talk about metrics, is looking at how many people are coming to your site as a result of your email newsletter. I've seen some just really, really high numbers here. I guess cart abandonment. So if anybody here has an e-commerce site, what you can do is, depending on how you're doing sales on your site, that you can set it up where people who put something in their shopping cart with the intention to buy, but they didn't go through with it, actually making the purchase, you can send an autoresponder to remind people that there's items in their shopping cart. One word here is I would be careful about offering a discount in order to get people to come back, because then they might start to learn that if they shop on your site and they don't make a purchase immediately, that if they wait a couple days, they're going to get a promo coupon. So I would be a little cautious about using the discount to get people to come back, because then they learn that's the only way that they're going to buy from you. The other, of course, driving sales. Again, you're actually buying something or it's a lead generation. And this is like used quite as commonly, but is post-order. How is your order? How have you been using our product, our service? Giving tips on how people can use what they purchased. And then contests. I see somebody talking about sales promos, and you can have a contest, and that gets people engaged, and then they're more likely to also share it too. Another thing, when you're doing some kind of follow-up, is you can have, once you have somebody's email address, maybe they do an action on your site, that they fill out a form or they download a white paper, then you can start sending autoresponders based on their action. So you have your email marketing where you're, intentionally putting content together one time for a weekly or monthly email newsletter, but you also might have autoresponders that go into play after somebody completes a specific action. We mentioned of course, the discount, which I said, definitely want to be very careful with that one. You want to be careful with how often the discounts are used, because if you're seen only as a discounter, then that may be the only time people are going to buy something from you. You can do account update. So what I did recently with what I mean account update is I live in Charleston, South Carolina. I do some in-person training and then do some online training. And what I was doing, which is not a great idea, is when I had an in-person training, I had been sending this to people who just signed up for information on training in general. Now, of course, the people who live cross-country aren't necessarily going to come out for something like that. So what I did is I went to update account, or I should say update profile, so I was able to see who was coming, who's in specifically the Charleston area, and I can be more targeted and send that message just to people that are here in town for those in-person training. Based could be when, if you do use deals or promotions, a couple people mentioned promotions, that you can say it's ending. So you could say only 3 more days until the 20% off deal expires, or whatever it is you're offering. You can do some kind of or some kind of reminder that the deal will be available a certain amount of time. Also, another time-based email would be an account expiration. So if somebody has some kind of subscription service, you can send a message so they know that their account is going to expire. Educational ones are great because they show, that you're a thought leader, that you know the industry. So you're giving people information. So for example, with any topic, you might show people how to do something, and just whether it's they're using your specific product or service or not, but just sending out information so they know that you're an expert in the field. Entertainment, of course, just for fun. Again, it depends on your audience. If you're maybe in a legal profession, you might not want to send out comics to your recipients because that's kind of a tough field there. But again, depending on what your industry is, you can send fun things out or entertainment. And again, I mentioned autoresponder, and that's something that I do on my site. Is I have people can sign up for 5 weeks of analytics tips, and the way the autoresponder works is once they sign up, they get a tip sent to them, and then from that sign-up day plus 7 days, so exactly 1 week, is when they get the second tip. So with an autoresponders can be very helpful because you're setting it up ahead of time. You have just a package of content that you want to have go out there, and then with the autoresponder, your messages are triggered based on a specific action. So it's a tool to consider if you're not yet doing autoresponders. Just another quick question, if people wouldn't mind. I'd love to know what makes it viral, and so what I'm asking is, again, this is no magic solution, but in your mind, when did you receive something that you thought was worth passing on to someone else? So take just a second. I'd like to what comments people have about what has made an email newsletter viral, that you've either forwarded it to a friend or you've shared it on social media. So just a second and let me know why you've shared it. And I'll just watch that for a minute before moving on. Great article, worth sharing. Yep, definitely something funny, right? We all need something entertaining. So unique, engaging, disrupts the norm. Yeah, absolutely, because there's so much noise that when you can stand out in some capacity, that's when people are going to be much more interested in passing it on. Thank you. Appreciate those comments. Okay, and I see another one. Educational, absolutely, an event. So that would be relevant to the person you're sending it to. So those are all great cases for when it could be viral. Some cases are, of course, the promotions. If I'm getting a deal and I know that you happen to like this product or service, that you can get a deal, I think would be great. This petition, I can give you a very specific example of this one. Is I have a friend of mine who utilizes a wheelchair, and there were some changes in Medicare funding that were going to affect her ability to have one that was customized for her needs. And so because I think I'm concerned that she has the tools she needs to get around as she can in her life, and that I saw that there could be a cut in funding, and so caring about her and seeing this as an important issue, I forwarded that to a whole bunch of people, that it was something that was important to me, important to her, and I think is just a topic that I personally felt people should care about, so I forwarded that around. So a petition can be a good one, too. Warnings. So the warnings are, if there's a something, consumer warning, or of course, around March, April is when you're going to have kind of tax scam warnings. So anything that, people just need to be aware of. And relevance is not just relevance, thinking of terms of relevance to the individual if you have a segmented list, but also relevance to the times. What are people talking about right now? And if you can find a way to relate, what you're about to things that are going on in the world at the time, the relevance. And again, of course, humor Everybody loves humor, especially on if you're having a slow day, and then just generally informative. It's something, and somebody mentioned that too, just something was educational, or it was just a really good article that they wanted to share. So do another quick poll, and I'd love to see how people have built their email list, and then I'll share some ways that I've done this as well. So take us a second and ways that you have built your email list, and then I'll talk about different opportunities you can use if you're looking to grow your list. So we'll take a minute to look at that. That they've built an email list. Yep, opt-in with web forms. People register maybe for a seminar or workshop. So I'll go through some different ways and talk about some. Yep, event attendees, absolutely. So to you. So yes, so building your list. Of course, the form on your website. So it's good to have, you probably want to do this in a couple different places. And I think being above the fold is important. So above the fold would be what somebody can see on their screen without having to scroll. A lot of site visitors are only going to give you a couple seconds, regardless of how they got there. So if you want to stay connected with them before they leave your site, you've got to have an email sign-up box, and it needs to be prominent so they can see it without having to scroll down. The other thing is having the sign-up option on popular pages. So it's not just your home page or your updates page, but to have that in a few different places so people have different options where they can sign up. Of course, send to a friend. So you're encouraging maybe forwarding or sharing. So your current subscribers absolutely can help you grow your list if you're making it easy for them. And of course, if you're sending something that they care enough about that they want to share out. So when you're sending your email newsletter to your list, you want to give them options to email it to a friend. And then, of course, those social media buttons, share on Twitter or Facebook. And I'm going to come back to that signature link one. I'll be back to that one in just a minute. Of course, make it easy. Share, email, social media, however they work. You can also promote it on social media. So you can want to do more than, getting on Twitter and saying, sign up for my e-newsletter, because a generic message like that is just going to get drowned out in the noise. But if you're offering something, sign up for my white paper or marketing template or some kind of resource, and you're saying, you're making it very clear what they get as a result of signing up, people are going to be more responsive to that than just the, hey, sign up for our e-newsletter. So finding a partner, if you know somebody who has a complementary service to what you offer, so they're not a direct competitor, they offer something that makes sense that the two work together. So what you can do is if you have a partner and there is an offer you have that's maybe relevant to their subscribers, then they might want to have a reason to invite their subscribers to subscribe to your newsletter, and then you can do the same. So with partners, you can reach a wider audience. With guest posts. Now, oftentimes if you contribute to a site as a guest blogger, you're generally going to be asked to make it, great content and not a hard sell. But if you can offer great content as a guest blogger and you demonstrate your expertise, you might be able to do a small ask at the end, inviting people to subscribe for more updates, or at least, again, that's a way to demonstrate expertise that they're going to come back to your site. Then I said old school sign up, and I'll tell you what I mean by this is I've used a sign up form at speaking events before. So, if you're out in public and you're presenting to a group, you can invite them to subscribe. And so, they may do it right then, get on their phones and subscribe, or they may say that they'll subscribe, when the event's over and they completely forget about it. But what I've been doing that's actually worked real well is when I go and speak to an in-person group of people, maybe 20, 30, I bring just an old school piece of paper on the back table, and I say, if you're interested, I'm happy to sign you up when I get home. So that way, if they don't think about it again when they're walking out the door, I, of course, have an incentive to get them to sign up. So I'm going to take that and I just manually enter that when I get home for the people who didn't enter it themselves. And that's actually worked surprisingly well. So I've been able to, I'm kind of surprised at how well that's worked in terms of getting people to sign up. Of course, having a webinar, so there's a number of ways you can do that even if it's a free event versus a paid event, people are still going to provide their email address, and of course they have an interest in the subject. Another thing, before I get into this tagged feature link that I don't have this on here, is that you can invite people to subscribe in your blog posts. So if they come to your site to read a blog post, maybe they saw it on social media, and there's no kind of call to action about what to do next in the post, people might read it and then leave. But if you have an invitation to read more, so at the bottom of the post, if you're interested in updates on this topic, et cetera, you can also use that as a way to get people to subscribe. Back to this tagged, we talk about tagged signature link. This is a little bit of a bigger topic for another time, but this is just to making you aware of this. If you are looking at your data in Google Analytics, for most products, or for a lot, like if you're doing a Google AdWords campaign, the links are going to, if you're set up correctly, will be tracked automatically in Analytics. If you are doing email marketing, you use MailChimp, Constant Contact, a lot, or any other tool, most of them will have some way for you to connect that to your Analytics account. But if you find that you're doing email, maybe you're just sending it, you're getting into Gmail and you're just sending it out that way, or you're not using any kind of tool, what happen is that when you're looking at your data in Google Analytics, you don't necessarily know how people got there. So, because you don't have tagged links. Again, this is another, topic for another time, but you're not able to see your email newsletter traffic in your Google Analytics account. Like perhaps it's just showing up as all direct visits. You can't see where they came from. Just make a note on this URL builder form, which is free. It's just a free little tool that you can use to best track your data in Analytics, because it's important to know if they came from email, versus just typing in your URL versus another source. So that one, I just kind of want to mention that if you seem to be tracking detail from your email marketing efforts. Next thing is what recipients want. In a way, this is very easy because we've been recipients and we know the kinds of things that we want if we're going to get an email newsletter from somebody. You want an easy opt-in, but also an easy opt-out. And I say easy opt-in because I've actually been on a site before where it doesn't make sense to me, but to get into their email newsletter, I'd have to set up an account and a password. And so I obviously didn't do that. But on the flip side, I haven't been able to get out of an email newsletter because there's no easy opt-out. Like there's not just an unsubscribe button that I can click on. I have one that I need to just reset the password so I can get out of it, but it's telling me I have to get into my account, indicate, preferences, blah, blah, blah. You've got to just have it, make it easy to get in and easy to get out. The other one is the no share policy. We're all very paranoid about who we share our email addresses with and how, when that's going to get out. So, if you are starting an email newsletter, or even if you have one going now, it's a good idea to indicate that, no, we absolutely will not share or sell or misuse your email address. The thing that's important is to have some kind of contact info. So you've probably seen this in newsletters. Well, they'll come to you from no reply at, whateverwebsite.com. I'm not a fan of this practice because if you're sending an email newsletter and there's no way for people to easily contact you, it kind of sends the impression that you're just not really that interested in engaging with them. So even if it comes from a no reply, at least have, questions about this, please email info at. So make sure that they can engage with you after receiving the email newsletter and you're not just shutting them down with a no reply. The one is for new information. So I can give you a couple examples. Well, one is there's a pizza place near me that I have ordered from before, and I've gotten on their email newsletter, and then I very quickly unsubscribed because what they were sending in their email newsletter was the exact same thing that I would see on their website. So I'm getting something in. Now, of course, them, it's their benefit if I say subscribed, and then every month or week, whenever they send it out, I remember the pizza parlor's name and I consider ordering. But after just, 2 messages, I unsubscribed because there was nothing new in there. There was no reason for me to be subscribed. And of course, the simple CTA or call to action, right? So why would somebody, what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to sign up for a course? Are they supposed to reply? So you want to make sure it's pretty apparent what they're supposed to do as a result of receiving your email newsletter. Let me go through some of the components of a good message. So the teaser is the preview text. So you may have had this before. You've received an email, and before you opened it, you see something. This I've seen when people forget to change this. It says, use this area to offer a short preview of your email's content. That means that somebody forgot to change that preview text to say, to give a teaser about what's in the email. So I see that a lot of people forget to edit that area to highlight the focus of the email or newsletter. So you want to take advantage of that and customize that line and make it interesting. So you might do is even offer a short answer to whatever you're promoting with your headline. So if your headline is having trouble maintaining your blog, like that's the subject of your email newsletter, the bio text could say something like 3 steps for better blog management. So people know immediately that your email newsletter is going to answer the question or address the issue that was in your headline. The other thing is the next one, exclusive, including an offer only to your email subscribers. So you want to give them a reason to be on your list rather than just going to the website when they need to make a purchase. So there should be some kind of exclusivity so people remember why they subscribed and to prevent them from unsubscribing. So, for example, I said the pizza place that I've unsubscribed from their emails. Now, if I had something that was a subscriber-only coupon, if it's not new information, if it was a coupon for me just as a subscriber, then I would have more incentive to stay on their list. Again, the offer is something new. So that pizza, same thing, constantly, same coupons available to anyone, so I unsubscribed. So the simple call to action, I just want to give you another example of what not to do. I occasionally receive an email from a company. They address it to me by name, says to Tina. I mentioned different deals that are available based on my interests. So it sounds like it's a good start. That's a clear call to action. I have an incentive to click on that. But the problem is that when I click on the link to see my deals, I have to log on to the site with a username and password. So if you're anything like me, you don't remember all of your passwords offhand. And, they got me the first couple times with that part of their email messaging, but eventually I just unsubscribed because I didn't want to have to hunt to find my password for a deal that I may not even want. So you want to have a call to action that's simple, and the key thing here too is just do not make people work for it. If you have an offer on product A, when you click on the link, they should go to the page that has the information about product A. So again, don't make people work for it. So segmentation is, the common way is to send the same message to everyone on the email list, right? So it's just the easiest. You just send this out to everyone on there, but then it's pretty clear that your recipients are just a number. They're not a name or an individual. So if you're a brick and mortar store, you have a physical location, but you also serve people nationwide, you want to think about those differences when you're creating your email. If you email an entire list of people and you invite them to an in-person deal, that's going to ignore people who are 200 miles away. You're making it just a locals deal. So in this case, if you can collect information about recipients from the start by getting their city or zip code information, that can make it easy for you to segment and you didn't do that from the start, like I mentioned with my training email, was just people interested in training. I didn't get their cities initially, but I now do that and ask people to update their profile. So I'm sending more targeted messages. And a lot of people generally will be open to updating their profile as long as you're not getting too personal. Explain that the update is for the purpose of catering offers that are specific to them. You should get a good response because, of course, they don't want anything irrelevant coming to them at all. So that segmentation ties into that geographically relevant. If it's just for local, you shouldn't be including people that are cross-country. The subject line is important. So November email is not a great subject line. The subject line should give them an incentive to open it and that they can see that it's more than just a monthly newsletter. It's got content or information that they care about. Scarcity can work too. If you're always using the scarcity principle, it's kind of obvious that you aren't really practicing scarcity. But if you had a new product launch and you said our beta or our initial sign up is discounted at this much for 7 days or the first 100 people, that can get people's attention too if the scarcity really is true. And if you are sending something every Monday that you said it's the first 100, well, then it's clear, it's using that as a slogan and there's not any real scarcity with your deal. And then again, subscriber focused. So we have our brands, we have our products and our services, and, we think they're great and, want to talk about it. But you have to remember that you need to be focused on your subscribers, so why would they want to hear more about you and your company? So make sure you're focused on them. And if you, can include their name or address their preferences, it's going to just go over a lot better with your recipients. I really liked this screenshot that I stole from somebody else. But if you take a look at these up here, if you look at the top half, what this one is doing is it's dividing subscribers based on their activity. So we have new, active, lapsing, inactive. And if you're segmenting this way, then customers can receive content relevant to their activity level. So maybe you have your new people or, hey, we haven't heard from you in a while. We'd love to hear from you again. So that's one interesting way to segment. Along the bottom, too, it's the same kind of thing, except it doesn't offer anything. So the top is you're doing 10% for new people or to get them back. The bottom is still the same messages. So you can segment based on activity without having to give an offer. Like we last one shows, we miss you. So you're acknowledging that you haven't interacted with this person for a while and you'd like to get them back in. So I think that's another great way to think about segmenting. This is a quick, this one is always a fun question to ask, is what are some don'ts from email you've received? Again, your personal experience. It could be something you've done as a business, but something from your personal experience that was a don't. Second, if people want to know in the Q&A or chat, just things that were don'ts from emails, and then we'll go ahead and talk about that a little bit. People are afraid to mention their don'ts. They don't want to, ask people to unsubscribe. Still looks like a mass email blast. A good one. Very obvious don't, and I've been the recipient of that a couple times this week, is I got on an email list that I never subscribed to. And it was really bad because it was talking to me like I was a current customer. It was somebody I had never done business with, and so just was not a very good impression. They don't know who they're emailing. So, of course, some don't. If there's too many options. So if you're sending out an email campaign with a specific goal, you might want to have maybe one or two calls to action, so you're not confusing the recipient and you're keeping them, focused on this one thing you want them to do. If there's not enough white space, like if you have a button instead of text link, you want to have white space around that call to action button so people can see it very easily. Forget about design. You don't want an email newsletter that's ugly. Obviously, you want that to appeal to people. Too much segmentation. I think you can, if you have just too many ways that you're trying to break it down, I think that's going to just be hard to manage. You might want to do some experiments too. This one bugs me. This is a personal pet peeve, is the CC. So I have people who send me an email update and they do it just, in email such as Gmail instead of an email tool. And you can see everybody's names on the CC, and then people start to go overboard with the reply all. So that's one of my issues, I understand, but that's just a pet peeve when we start having all of those names on the CC email. So if you do send out messages that way instead of a tool, at least use BCC, the blind carbon copy, so people can't see it. If you have too many graphics, so if people open your email newsletter and they choose not to download or view the image, I've seen messages go out before that really don't have any text. It's just one big message. But if somebody doesn't choose to display the image, it's one image that has the message, then they're not even, they're not going to see anything you're offering. I recommend testing it as a recipient, so you can preview your messages, but I would still send it to yourself and see how everything looks. And of course, this one that I just mentioned, people who didn't request it, especially the person I mentioned who thanked me for being a customer when I had never done business with them. So lots of don'ts. I'm looking at, just to honor time and give time for questions, I will keep going with this one and talking right away about metrics and some things that you might want to be measuring if you're not measuring already. So measuring, of course, is the open rate. So the open rate sounds pretty obvious, what percentage of people opened your newsletter. And that's what I mentioned with images, that if they don't download the images or click on anything, it's probably not going to count as an open. So there's some things that, will keep you from having an exact number for the open rate because of the images, but you can still see some trends over time. So if you find that your open rate every month is generally around 40%, and then you start seeing rates that are 20%, could be your subject line's not enticing, or they just have email fatigue. And the reverse is true, that if your open rates have only been 20% for a few months and now they're up to 40%, then you've been doing better with your subject lines, that they're more engaging, that people want to open them. So, and then of course the click-through rate. So your call to action is going to be some kind of click. So they register, fill out a form, read a post, they do whatever action you think is important. You might want to have that invitation to click in a few different places of your newsletter. So you might want to put it at the top for people who might not read more than a line or two, and then have it again at the bottom for those who read everything, just to remind them what you're asking them to do here. Next one, what I call a converted click. So if we go for the example of registering for an event, so maybe 100 people click on the link to register an event, but only 20 people actually do the registering. So I think of that as a converted click. So those are two different metrics. People who click, so 100 people clicked on the registration link, but only 20 went through with completing it. So be aware that those are two different metrics, and just try to figure out why that difference might be there. So for example, if you are always offering free events and then you have a paid one, maybe the registration rate will go down because that's something you've never offered before. Or if you're scheduling an event first thing in the morning and you find that people really only come to the lunchtime events, so you can start exploring why your click-through rate and your converted click is different. And then, of course, the forwards and shares indicates if people find your information valuable enough to share. Do they forward it to a friend? Do they share it on Twitter? And I mentioned with the unsubscribes, it happens. So if, like I said earlier, if you go from an email newsletter every Monday and now it's 3 times a week, people not like those extra messages because they didn't request them. And of course, like the pizza company by me, if they say the same thing all the time, people are going to unsubscribe. List size is another thing to measure over time. So do you have 500 people is that good or bad? Well, that depends. So if you have 500 people on your list and last month you had 400, that's great that you went up 100. There's something that's bringing more people in. But if you have 500 on your list and a few months ago you had 1,000, you're getting a lot of unsubscribes. So what's been happening that these unsubscribes are, starting to increase? Of course, device type. So mobile is not going to go away. So you might want to consider how many of your users open your email newsletter on their mobile device, and look at some of those metrics to see if they're clicking through and completing the desired action, which of course you can see following all the way through in Google Analytics. And then I want to mention the Solutions Gallery. So there's a lot of metrics that are available in your email newsletter tool. But because I'm a big Google Analytics user, I like to use the Solutions Gallery for dashboards and reports about traffic that once they got to your site. So this screenshot just shows you very quickly this Google Analytics Solutions Gallery. So if you are using an analytics, you can search on that and you'll see this is just a free tool by Google. And I just did a search term for solutions on email marketing. You can see a couple people here have created dashboards that I can use to view my email marketing data. And just doing Solutions Gallery very briefly today, but what you're able to do is when you're logged into Google Analytics, you can import these dashboards into your analytics account and then review your email marketing performance there. So people are they're clicking, and that's great that they click, but you know what really happens once they get to your website. Are they taking a desired action? So if you remember that Solutions Gallery for Google Analytics users, you'll find this very helpful to see how your site visitors are doing. Go to Q&A. Just want to show a couple examples of things that are good and not so good. Take a look at this first one. This one is, they have a clear message that it's 20% off, and if you look at the red text right away, you say, okay, well, this is Father's Day. But then they have a lot of extra stuff. So they've got women, juniors, kids, dining, handbags, watches. So this message is doing a little too much. So if their core theme is the 20% off on Father's Day, they need to remove a large percentage of the other items on here, because people can get too distracted, and when your goal seems to be that you're focusing on Father's Day. This one is confusing too. So they have a couple different offers. So there's this 40% off clearance, and then there's a clearance up to 75%. So there's two different percentages off in the same email, but they're both for clearance items. So this one I think could be a little bit clearer. Is this really 40%, or is this one of those things where there's only two items that are the 75% off? So that one could use a little more clarity. Let's look at the next one. This one is good, right? There's no question here. So they're having a sale, it's up to 50% off, and you can click and you right away and you're shopping for the sales. So I think that's a good one. It's a very, very clear message. There's another one that gets into that kind of that scarcity. So you see it says for today only, you get 15% back. It says, again at the bottom, for today only, 15% back. We never do this. So that's a good message if it's true that you never do it. Again, if your 15%, we never do this, happens on the first of every month, well, it's clear that you do that. So you only want to say that if it's really true. This is great because it's a subscriber-only deal. So it's for you. So if you go surfing online, this is not available to anyone else. It tells you when it ends, so it's just for a certain person, and it's only a certain period of time. This next one I think is a little problematic with the colors. So it's clear that there's only one message. The colors are a little tough there, and the problem that could be with this one is if this was sent only as an image, they had the rooftop opening party, and there wasn't any text in the message. and not clear, what to do. So if somebody didn't download images and they didn't see this image and they didn't see text, they don't know what they're going to do there. So another one I want to show you before we have some time for Q&A. So this is a conference that was in town recently here in Charleston, South Carolina. So what I like about it is, sometimes it's true personalized can be too much like a mass e-blast, but I like that they had, my name in here for, for Tina. And this is a very, very clear call to action. The opportunity to win a free ticket to the conference in a hotel room, right? So, right, you can see that from the top. If you look at the very top left, you can see they got the preview text right. The very top left, the small teaser says win a ticket and hotel stay. The message is that the winners will get a pass to the conference and a hotel stay. So that's what this message is about. It's about winning a ticket for the hotel. Winning a ticket for the conference and a free hotel stay. The next one, this is from the same people, same conference planners. And right away, it has that urgency. So it's, this conference, this is your last chance to save $100. So, it's very clear this is what it's offering, the content, and so the early bird ticket, whatever date that was, they were saying it's to end. So really, of course, needs to end. If the early bird date keeps, being moved out, well, then again, we're not actually using scarcity. We're just, kind of trying to trick people in there. So again, those are just some good examples and some not so good examples. And I know we do have a few minutes left. So, Tracy will let me know if there's any questions that people have. And note here the ASP ROI link. This is the blogging I do for ASPE, and you'll see a lot of times when I do a webinar, my content on there is related to it. So you'll see some posts on there related to email marketing, and it's a good review of the content I went over here today. So with some time for questions, just turn back over to Tracy.
Thanks, Tina. So far the questions have been about today's presentation and getting a copy of today's presentation. So I will just give you guys a quick reminder. We will be sending a copy of today's presentation slides as well as a full recording of today's presentation out via email by the end of next week. That email will be coming from an ASPE representative. So if you would like to receive a copy, please go ahead and whitelist aspeinc.com with your email service provider. We had another question about PDUs for today's event. Since this isn't a project management related web seminar, it was not approved by PMI to award one PDU for attendance, so no, you will not be receiving a PDU for today's web seminar. But if you head over to aspe-sdlc.com, all of those web seminars are approved by PMI to award one PDU. That's it for today. Thank you, Tina, for an excellent presentation as always. We do have just a couple more minutes, so we will stay on the line for just a few minutes to make sure no more questions come in. But again, just keep an eye out for a copy of today's presentation slides and recording in your email